Hello, everyone. We are live. Welcome to the Semrush webinar on how to justify the budget you need for your new PPC campaigns. My name is Joe Martinez. I will be your host. I am the Director of Client Strategy at Clicks Marketing, but I'm just the host. I'm not really the person you came here to see. We have a wonderful panel of three guests who are going to join in and give us their opinions and a slight presentation on how we can utilize our PPC budgets and get the information we need to justify the budgets either on our current campaigns or going on into breaking out into new campaigns. So we're going to wait a few minutes. We always have a few late stragglers coming in, which is okay. So if you're tuning in on the live chat, feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, where you're from, who you work for. And if you have any questions on what you want to get out of this webinar, start asking those now. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for some people to still come in, I would like to introduce our guests so far. So first, we have Joel Bondarowski. He is going to be our main presenter today. So, Joel, you describe yourself as a true PPC addict. You've been in love with PPC, going all the way back to 2000, which is even way before I even got into this industry. This is pretty cool. One of the OG guys. You are the founder of PPC Designs, and he serves as the Semrush Academy PPC professor. So, Joel, welcome. If there's anything else you want to say, anything you want to introduce yourself, let the crowd know right now.
I know you said. I know you probably started. You feel like I started way before you. There is a caveat there. Like I kind of dabbled in PPC back in 2000, 2001 to 2002, and I took a giant hiatus until 2009. So it's not like I've been in it all the way through. But I did have a fun time back then. I mean, things were very different. I mean, back then it was so different that the largest provider was GoTo.com, which served the default PPC results on the default search engine at the time, which was off the default browser, Netscape Navigator. Also, it served the default PPC results for the default internet service at the time, America Online. So the landscape has changed quite a bit.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Yeah, in 2000, I was definitely on AOL building HTML websites on Angel Fire, and everything through Internet Explorer. So it's different times now.
Right. Back then, you could actually, there was no such thing as quality score. Ranking was determined by how much you're willing to bid. So it was basically just that. And they would show you what the first, second, and third place people who are bidding, competitors were bidding. So you could see like, okay, these people are bidding 50 cents. So I'd always bid like 51 and so on. And that's what got you traffic back then. Yeah.
I miss those times. But all right, welcome, Joe. We're really looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we have Aaron Levy. So Aaron has been in the digital space for over a decade, and he's been running PPC for campaigns at DuPont as a college junior. So he's been doing this for a while. Definitely a vet in the industry. Now he's the director of SEM at Elite SEM, oversees a team of 25 plus enterprise PPC marketers in the Mid-Atlantic and the Midwest. He's an instructor at Drexel and University of Vermont, and he's trying to grow the next generation of marketers. So Aaron, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you. I haven't been around since the days of GoTo, but I do remember the days where if your ads didn't work, you could really just email your Google rep and get a credit back. Those days are long gone, which is why we're here to talk about how to budget right.
There we go. That's wonderful. That's a good way to transition. And last but not least, of course, is Ginny Marvin. You may know Ginny. She's the editor-in-chief of Search Engine Land, Marketing Land, and MarTech Today. She has more than 15 years of marketing experience in agency and in-house management roles. So another industry veteran in the mix. Ginny, glad to have you on this webinar too.
Great. Thanks for having me. Yes, I don't go back to GoTo, but definitely Overture, ClickTracks. Any ClickTracks fans here? We used to have ClickTracks analytics running on a separate desktop computer with a giant, 1 foot by 1 foot backup battery in case the power died.
The days of hosting your own servers, and also the days when people actually analyze server log files.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And you get so much more information out of them than you could today.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, this is our panel, and we have a lot of people chatting, introduce themselves. So everyone who is joining the webinar, welcome. We are about to get started. So the format's going to go, Joel's going to kick things off with about a 15, 20 some minute presentation. Within the presentation, we are going to have a few spots for some Q&A and kind of break things down a little bit more. So keep going in the live chat, ask your questions. We're going to monitor those, try to get to as many as possible. And then afterwards, we're going to go to a more in-depth, full-blown Q&A with everyone on our panel. So Joel, I'm going to pass things to you and let's kick things off.
Okay, wow. Well, this is, I'm very excited to do this. This is actually something I wanted to present for a very, very long time. So let me figure this out. I'm trying some new tech here. I hope it works out okay. And go. Okay, well, that was smooth. Okay, so as you know, the topic here is how to justify the budget you need for campaigns. And I think that this is based on a big problem that a lot of us have, whether we are running our own campaigns for, whether we're running campaigns for clients or, we're working for a boss. The problem is that making campaigns profitable costs time and money. Also, the person who you have to ask the money from, whether it's a client, maybe whether it's your CEO or a CFO, they're nervous about giving it. And sometimes it's difficult in order to explain exactly what it is because they're not really PPC people. They don't understand that the amount you need is difficult to define. So it's kind of like a feeling of, okay, I need X amount of dollars. Why? I do to become profitable. Well, what's that mean? I need to do that to optimize. What's that mean? Well, and it's kind of like a very difficult situation. And I think one thing that really good campaign optimizers often miss out on is the ability to get the budgets they need to succeed, because you do need that money in order to optimize campaigns so that you can get to the point where you can consistently return more on them than you spend. The thing about like PPC is that the traffic that you're driving to your site actually brings statistics that you need to optimize. So because of that, success for PPC campaigns comes from using the stats that you are basically buying for campaign optimization. Now, like when I say campaign optimization, what exactly is that? I mean, campaign optimizers know that, but it is important that you give some definitions to whoever it is that has to finance the whole thing, which is basically optimizing ads, optimizing targeting, and also bidding, and finally improving the sales funnel. And I'll get into how all of those play in each other in a bit. But first, I want to talk for a second about myself. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. I was actually one of Google AdWords' first 300 users a long time ago when it was called AdWords. That was pretty recent, but that was way back. I dabbled in AdWords back in the 2000s, like we spoke about earlier. Somehow, after running campaigns for a bit back then, I ended up living in the north of Brazil for 6 years. Don't ask why. It was a great time, though, a great experience for me. I moved to Israel in 2009. Where I actually really fell in love with the profession working at Wix.com. It was a tremendous opportunity that I had where I really learned how to drive performance-based campaigns with their amazing sales funnel, and also and also the industry that they're in. When you're selling a website builder, there are so many ways that you could reach people by what they're looking for that it was really like a dream for any search campaign optimizer. I worked briefly at SimilarWeb, which is somewhat of a competitor to Semrush, before I founded Quality Score in 2012, which is a boutique advertising agency, which is actually currently running some of the largest Facebook and Google campaigns in the area. And now I am launching a new company called PPC Designs, while at the same time I'm very active with Semrush, where I taught their PPC Academy, and also I'm involved with these webinars and some other events that they have. So let's begin. What are the factors in determining budget? First of all, there are three main factors I want to speak about. The first one is the data load that you need in order to optimize your campaign. The second is the cost of the data. And the third is how quickly you want to grow versus how much you want to risk. Those are really the three factors that determine how much budget you need in order to launch a campaign. Now, let me start with data load. What I mean by data load is how heavy your targeting is. When I say heavy, it's more like how much your targeting is. So let's say you're trying to optimize a certain amount of budget on a very light data load. That might be, let's say, a certain amount of budget on 2 keywords in one ad group in search. It doesn't take long before you have enough traffic to understand how those keywords perform. But let's say you have a very heavy data load. That traffic gets divided across many keywords. And let's not forget that traffic is bringing statistics that you need in order to optimize effectively. So if your data load is heavier because you're running very large search campaigns, then you're going to have fewer stats per keyword. So it'll become more expensive and time consuming to optimize to become profitable. That's search. And I keep saying keywords because I'm thinking of search. Now, if you're talking about, let's say, display advertising, it is way larger. The requirements and how much data you need in order to optimize a display campaign goes up so many more times, because you're not just bidding on a keyword that brings search terms. You're bidding on audiences crossed by topics, which can be divided by demographics and all these other ways that become way more complex and data heavy than search. So if you're running display campaigns, it is much heavier. You need more budget. So when it comes to that, so that right there is one factor that you need to consider. Next, it is the cost of the data. And when the cost of the data is determined by two things primarily, the cost of the traffic versus the sales value. Let me explain why. Let's say hypothetically that you're promoting a mobile app. And a mobile app, let's say in some third world country where a click costs 2 cents. And your goal is to get a very, very, very small cost per install of, let's say, 20 cents. You don't need to spend very much until you have enough confidence, enough statistics in your targeting in order to understand like how it's doing to optimize it. Let's say you're advertising a very tiny search campaign, and the very tiny search campaign is some very competitive industry where a keyword costs $300, cost of traffic's very high, and a sales value, let's say it could be $10,000, right? Some very competitive real estate niche hypothetically. Then you're going to have to get quite a bit of traffic until you realize how to optimize it effectively. So those are different things you have to consider. Finally, it is the risk factor. You see, the thing is that if you start off with a larger budget, you're able to target more and be more aggressive. So you get more statistics faster, which leads to faster growth, but you are risking more in order to learn that, as opposed to starting with a smaller budget. If you start with a smaller budget, you start off with less statistics, slower growth, but you also are risking less money up front. So really what you have to do when you have the conversation with your boss about how much money you need is to start off with coming to them with the data cost factor. How much does it cost to get statistics you need in order to optimize the campaigns? If conversions are cheap, if traffic is cheap, and also if the data load is light because it's a small search campaign, the budget can be considerably smaller than if it's a very large EDN campaign, which also has very expensive conversions. So you put them all together and you get your starting budget. And I put together a very simple formula. It's a heuristic. It's something that just is to guide you on the dynamics of the three factors. So in this example, your budget would be equal to 1/4 of your risk factor multiplied by how heavy the data is times the cost, plus the cost. It's as simple as that. And by the way, I'm working on formulas for the previous two, for the data cost as well as the data load, to help you to help actually quantify this directly. It's something that I do myself internally when I take on new clients, and it's something I want to share with everyone else out there, because I think it's very, very important that people could understand this in order to get the budgets they need to be successful. So before I continue, I would like to stop and see if there's any questions out there.
Yeah, we had one question just due to looking at the size of the accounts, just looking at the people in the chat so far and some people who are responding. We see that there are marketers in here who deal with very, very small clients in terms of just account size and the radius that they're targeting. And then we also have, up to enterprise level clients. So the formulas that you have, Joel, do you adjust those in any way just due to those client sizes, or are you kind of using these as just an overall generic type of formula to use and predict that budget?
It's more complex internally when we're taking on an actual client. I have a very simplified generic formula that I'm giving now in order to explain it to you. I also use this simplified generic formula when I'm trying to explain it to a new client to get them to understand what it takes in order to be successful with the activity that they're doing.
Okay. Yeah. Aaron, we know you work with a lot of enterprise clients. So when you're dealing with massive clients that size who have a big budget, maybe the risk factor isn't that much of a big deal to them, or is it? Is someone in that situation, how do you typically approach that?
So it's different and it's more political. So there's two absolute horror stories that you can have when working with enterprise. Number one, you don't ask for enough money and you have to try and go get more and you leave money on the table. It's really bad when there's good inventory left that we just aren't spending money on. The other catastrophic scenario is when you ask for too much money and you can't spend it all. So when it sounds silly, but we often deal with clients who, not often, but it happens, where, at the end of the year, we haven't spent our complete budget and they're like, hey, we have to get rid of this money, which, okay, great, give me a boat and then we're done. Or a sauna, like we're talking about in chats. But the real answer is, if you ask for too much money and you don't get it, it diminishes trust in the future. So when you're thinking about budgeting for enterprise and using Joel's formulas as well, two things to think of are what inventory is out there that you can actually spend money on, and how does the quality of that inventory diminish? So one bad, real negative that I see in budget planning for a lot of people is you'll look at PPC or digital as one giant channel, and like you have one blanket metric. And that's extremely dangerous because the next dollar spent is never as profitable as the first one that you spend. There's only so much low-hanging fruit before you have to climb up the tree. So when you're budgeting, when you're forecasting, you have to think of, how does your best stuff perform? Okay, how much of it is there? Got all the great stuff. What's the next best stuff? How much does that cost? How good is that? What's the next best stuff? So on and so forth. So making sure that you discount every next dollar, because it probably won't be as good as the last one.
That's right.
And Ginny, what typical client size do you deal with, and how do you usually use budget planning in terms of planning out the risk versus the reward and explaining that to your clients?
Well, I'm not working with clients that much anymore, and as editor-in-chief. So, but my experiences are exactly what Aaron said. So what I find is, yes, you either end up with, you've budgeted for too little or too much, and both are bad. The worst way, I think, though, to start off a budget discussion is to respond to your client who says, so what's the CPC going to be? Right? Like that, when the conversation starts off like that, you're already totally off track of what is the goal. And so, I mean, with budgets and anything, it always goes back to what is the goal of this effort, and constantly like leading back to the function of this is to sell things, to get great leads, to XYZ at a return that's going to make sense for our business. That's sort of the big picture that I always just caution to keep in mind. And so, because you can really get off on these tangents of, well, I don't know, is when you're trying to predict and budget for a brand new campaign, and getting hung up on what your CPC is going to be can derail the whole big picture.
Or bring up metrics like impression share, or I want to outrank this guy. It's like, no, it's like, that's not the focus here. I mean, I can understand if you were about how your brand looks or whatever, but like the type of work I typically do is direct response, meaning we're looking to, get the most out of the dollars you spend on PPC, which, is basically what I speak with my clients. I tell them that the budget that they're investing is simply money that they're spending in order to optimize campaigns to where they break even. After they break even, then we grow the campaigns, and then afterwards we reach for the most profit possible. Yes.
Yeah, all good information, Joel. I'd say let's keep it going.
Okay, good. So let me continue, because I think you guys actually helped lead very well into the next part of my presentation, which are the stage, and that happened very naturally. I'm feeling very good about that. The stages of a PPC campaign. So basically, what the approach I take, and it's an approach that does give me a lot of credibility when I'm dealing with new clients, is besides coming out with a formula with a way to explain to them what they're investing in order to get something back, I tell them, first of all, before we begin, we start with a benchmarking period. That benchmarking period takes a percentage of your budget. It could be, let's say, 10% or 20%, depending on what's going on, to help us understand how far they are from the goal of breaking even. See, the idea with the campaigns that I typically run is that once you go past breaking even and we're profitable, the campaigns are no longer an expense. What you're paying Google or Facebook or whoever the platform is, it is in order to earn more back. So the budget is no longer limited. The effort becomes a resource just to drive more sales and business. And so the first goal is actually to go from having, this PPC bill being something that has to be justified to your investors or whoever's financing it, to becoming an asset for the company. And so the first goal is, the first thing we got to do is figure out how far away we are if we're starting from the beginning. Afterwards, we optimize campaigns. And as soon as we start optimizing, we start gauging how quickly we can close the gap and become 100% ROI positive. Afterward, and then After that, we grow campaigns. You try to see how much we can scale and grow them to reach their maximum potential. What does happen in this phase oftentimes is that once we start getting bigger and bigger, the cost for those new sales do get more expensive, as Aaron mentioned, which is very true. But it is something we have to do in order to understand what we can do with what we have in order to, conquer, the market as far as the channel we're advertising in. And then after that, we optimize for profit. So I'll start with the benchmarking period. For the benchmarking period, what we typically do is we'll take something about 10% of the budget that we determined from the previous slides, and we want to understand what our benchmark CPCs are. You see, a very big factor in breaking even is the amount of traffic, the cost that you're paying for traffic. Also, our benchmark conversion rates. What percentage of these clicks are becoming sales? Okay, and then we understand our ROI, which is a very simple formula. Your sales value. And let's say for the example that I'm going to give soon, the sales value is $100. And I know a lot of times, different, there's like sales values could all be variable, but to simplify things for the sake of this presentation, we have a fixed sales value for this example that I'm giving, and it'll be $100. So you take the $100, multiply it by the conversion rate, divide it by the amount you're paying per click, and that is your ROI. That's your return on investment. So we take 10% of our budget and for our benchmarking period, and let's say we were to spend $2,000. Our budget was 20 grand, and we have $100 sales value. So from the $2,000, we were learning our essential things such as, let's say, our conversion rate falls at 0.3%. Let's say our benchmark CPC is $5. Well, then our ROI is going to end up being $100 times 0.3% divided by $5, 6%. 6% ROI, that's terrible, okay? Basically, the client gives you you start up a campaign and you come back and say, you know what, we are 6% ROI positive on this. It's going to look pretty bad. Except the thing that you have to explain to whoever's financing your campaigns is that it's a process. This is where you fall in the beginning. We took just $2,000. They're willing to, they have 20 set aside. Let's continue and see what happens over the next period. By the way, does anyone have any questions about this phase? Formulas I gave or?
Yeah, one question too, and Joe, I'll start off with you for a response and just have anyone else can pitch in afterwards. When you're looking at, you want to go back to the sales value to make sure that equation is correct initially to start off, but then how often are you going back and reviewing what that actual sales value is to you to make sure that the amount that you're budgeting stays in line with the business and campaign goals?
Well, okay. Well, the example that I gave is one where you have a fixed sales value. If the sales value is, I mean, look, if the sales value changes, then I'm not looking at it. Basically, what I'm looking at is ROI. I'm looking at, like, I start off, how does my ROI fall? Where do I fall as far as my ROI goes? In the example I gave, where the sales value is fixed, it is primarily determined by how much you're paying for the traffic and your conversion rate. If it's a more sophisticated sales funnel where sales value is variable, then there are other factors there. But at the end of the day, what you're looking at is where your ROI falls for the benchmarking period, and then you understand how far away you are from reaching the point where you're able to put where your Google bill is no longer like an expense, and it starts becoming an asset. And that's something you can understand through the optimization period. The optimization period, which comes up next, is where you understand how quickly you can close the gaps.
And this could vary from industry too. I think, Aaron, you're about to pitch into, if you work with any subscription or e-commerce clients, where that value will change. If you have any experience updating that value?
Tons. The value varies, and it always depends on what a payback period is, for lack of a better. I don't want to tease too much into what Joel's getting into, but what I really appreciate that he's calling out, which not enough people do, is testing costs money. You have to make it back somewhere or another. Be it in insights, be it in time savings, be it in insights you can use in other channels. That $1,880 or whatever it was that he called out before, you have to get that back somehow. And I think that's something that's often discounted by a lot of paid search marketers, is that we look entirely at the metrics that we can see, but we forget about the business metrics. So we have to think about driving value to the business that not only pays for our marketing efforts, but pays for how much it costs to make the thing. And all the other delivery costs as well that we have to worry about.
Yeah, that has to be factored in as well. But the idea is eventually is that it does pay for itself, because once you optimize a sales funnel to where it could work, if you're in an industry that is wide and big, you can open it up and it could pay for itself many, many, many times over.
Yeah. Ginny, do you have any other additional factors you think could play into the mix?
No, but I just would echo, and I've heard Aaron talk about this before, about the need to understand that your investment budget is still spend that needs to get factored into your total investment and made back. So yeah, no, I just think the more that we put our business hats on, the more effective we're going to be for our clients.
Good.
That's right.
Very
Well, that's
good.
what we're all here for.
Was that another smooth transition, Joe? Is this going to lead into the next competition?
That was smooth because I think
I'll do what I can.
there are a lot of questions that are still open, and I feel like we're going to be answering them as we move on. So now I shall transition to the optimization period.
Good.
Okay, the optimization period. Now, in the optimization period, our goal is to close the gap, and the way we do that is by the way, again, in the benchmark period, we started off with a 0.6% ROI. We lost almost everything we spent. That was 10% of our budget. We have another 90% of the budget left in order to, which is what the client is willing to lose in order to build a sustainable money machine with PPC. In order to do that, the two factors that are contributing to our ROI with the fixed sales value, by the way, are conversion rates and also your cost per clicks. You improve conversion rates two ways: by improving your campaign targeting. So let's say we launch these campaigns, and right away we're looking at our targeting, and we see that there's some keywords that just don't work. There's some geos that just show zero interest in purchasing, and let's say there's some time of the days when people are just never going to buy this. Just by cutting the median, you're increasing your conversion rate, thus helping to close that gap. Also, funnel optimization, conversion optimization also helps. If you are able to, let's say, double the conversion rate off of a landing page by improving a few things here and there, which is kind of easier to do when you're first starting something out. When you have a new campaign or a new effort, there are more low-hanging fruit to optimize from your sales funnel. So you want to be testing right away, because any incremental conversion rate that you increase in your sales funnel does help close the gap. So those two areas right there will help increase the value for every visitor that you get. And also, you want to lower your cost per clicks, because with PPC advertising, the PPC platform gets paid every time you get a click, yet they're selling you impressions. They reward you greatly if your ads get more clicks. So if you A/B test your ads thoroughly and are able to improve how relevant they are for the people that are looking for them, you will pay less per click. And that also, by the way, comes with better campaign targeting. If, let's say, you're targeting keywords that are completely irrelevant to your ads, that'll hurt you. You'll pay more per click because of that. So improving that will help close the gaps. So let me give you an example of another optimization period. So before, I was talking about the benchmark period where we spent $2,000. We had a 0.3% conversion rate, and we're paying $5 per click with a 6% ROI. Horrible, right? First week, oh, by the way, and we lost $1,880. Comes the first week of the optimization period where we spent $2,000. We have a 0.5% conversion rate because of some of the steps that I took earlier. We then have an 11% return on investment because we have a $4.50 cost per click. In other words, we use that formula again to compare the value per click to the amount we're paying per click. And automatically, because we tweaked a bit, we were able to almost double our ROI from practically nothing to a little bit better than practically nothing. But because these campaigns are coming with a lot of data, a good campaign optimizer knows how to make the most of it. And by the way, this is just a very theoretical example, but this is what happens when you start off campaigns and you're losing and you start working towards closing the gap. So let's say after that first week, my boss is pissed. We lost $1,850 after that $2,000. I say, give me another week. This will give him the confidence he needs to go for another week, which then has the conversion rates increase, the ROI increase up to 17%. That $2,000 period cost $1,650. Week 3, $1,000 in the hole. Week 4, $500 in the hole. Finally, week 5 has us at 100% ROI. By the way, these weeks are just time periods. I just chose to call them weeks for the sake of this presentation. If we had bigger budgets and were able to spend more faster, those weeks could have been cut in half. If, on the other hand, the budgets, we didn't want to be as aggressive. We wanted to be more conservative and risk less. These weeks could be months. So that's one way that the size, the way that risk the risk and reward balance each other. If you're willing to risk more, you do grow faster. You get that reward quicker. Next comes the growth period. So once we get to the point where the campaigns pay for themselves, we can then open up budgets and grow. The goal in the growth period is to grow campaigns to reach their natural maximum potential with a neutral or 100% ROI. I mean, it depends on the goal of the company itself, but the recommended practice is not to be focused on making your money back yet, but instead try to find every place you can convert as long as you're not losing. So take any money you receive and put it into growing campaigns, or even invest a bit more into growing other campaigns and also other channels. But the idea there is just to maximize your reach, also while optimizing your sales funnel, your ads, your targeting, and so on. So this is the way that could look. Before I showed the benchmark, the benchmark phase, which looks something like that. So with the growth period, I'll begin with the last week of the optimization period, where we were at 100% ROI, 2%, at 100% ROI, and we were making nothing. We're spending $2,000 and receiving $2,000 back. We had a 2% conversion rate, and we're paying $2 per click, which is what brought us to the 100% ROI. The goal now is to maintain the 100% ROI, but open up budgets. So here comes the first week. We open up budgets. We uncap campaigns that are performing this way, set them to accelerated ad delivery, and we managed to spend $4,000 with still a 2% conversion rate and a $2 cost per click. So basically, same stats, just double the volume. We continue to optimize, and then something interesting happens. The interesting thing that happens is that the cost per click actually goes up to $2.20. Before, our optimization was lowering the cost of traffic. Well, in the growth period, what often happens is that you find that more expensive traffic actually works better. More expensive traffic, when campaigns are targeted well, means that is actually a good thing. And more expensive, if your campaigns are reaching the right people and they cost more, it's for a reason. It's because those are the people at the times from the locations that are more actionable and more likely to convert. So oftentimes when I'm growing campaigns and optimizing it, I'm actually finding that my cost per clicks are going up because I'm excluding the worthless traffic and I'm targeting harder on the better traffic. Conversion rates also go up because I see that this traffic is converting better, so I'm bidding higher on it, and it all balances itself out. I end up making more. I end up spending more. I end up selling more, to the point where on week 8, we are spending $20,000. Week 9, after all of our optimization efforts, we max out. We are having trouble growing at that point. We're having trouble optimizing campaigns to where they could get to where we could cover any more ground, because we have pretty much done everything we can. We've reached everyone we could reach. I mean, there's still more that could be done, but if it does happen, it'll be incremental. And that means that it is time to slow down and focus on the profit period. Now, I will add, and I think Aaron pointed this out, is that it's not really that, it's a little bit more gradual. What happens eventually is that making those extra sales start costing a lot more per sale. So that's essentially what's happening from week 8 to week 9. We're reaching the point where getting those extra conversions at the price we want is becoming too expensive. So at that point, let's slow down on growing and start focusing on making money. So the goal of the profit period is to find your optimal ROI. What does that mean? Well, a lot of times people, will come and say, you know what, I want to have 200% return on investment. If I break even selling this at $100, I want to sell it at $50. But they don't understand that problem is that sometimes if your ROI drops too low, if you shoot for too high of an ROI, you're going to lose so much sales volume that you're not going to make enough. So really the goal is to find that sweet spot. And I'll show an example of how that works. And the way you do it is that once you kind of reach your full market potential, you start lowering your bids. By lowering your bids, you're lowering those costs per clicks. You are then lowering your cost per acquisition and increasing your ROI. So profits start to go up, your profits increase. Let's continue. Let's continue to lower those bids. Let's continue to lower that CPA. Let's continue to raise that ROI. In the meantime, sales volume is dropping. What will eventually happen is that profits drop. When you're there, you have found your optimal ROI. So let's begin with an example again. We'll pick up from week 9, the last part of the growth phase. And week 10 is the beginning of the profit phase. So what happens here is that we drop our bids so that we're now paying $2.50 per click. We have a little bit of ROI at 104%. And we managed to make $720. But guess what? Our campaign spend drops to $18,000. Our campaign spend drops to $18,000. What also drops is our sales volume, but our spend is dropping faster than our sales volume, so we are making more, which is great. Week 11 comes along, ROI goes up, profits go up pretty quickly. Then we have week 12 and week 13. On week 13, what happens is we reach a point where we're at 162% ROI. We're paying $1.60 per click. And we're making, but our campaigns are tiny compared to the year before at only about $7,500 for that month. Now, let's continue. Let's continue to drop those bids. Let's continue to increase that ROI. Week 14 comes along, ROI goes up to 173%, but because sales volume drops so low, our profits start to drop. So essentially what happens here is that our sweet spot would be what we have at week 13 when we have 162% ROI. With the campaigns optimized the way they are in this example, if we bid too low, our volume will drop to the point where we're making less money than if we were at 162% ROI. So I'm ready for questions. I think that was a lot for a period, and let's see what you guys have to say.
Sure. Thank you very much. So we still had a few more questions come in, and I think some of it can kind of pertain to a lot of the stages that we've talked about so far. So I just want to make sure I'm pulling the right one here. The biggest question that we've got all across the board, and this could really affect a lot of everything from even the planning through, especially I think through the optimization for sure, is a lot of people are asking about shared budgets. They have shared budgets in between campaigns. Typically, does anyone here, and I would like to get everyone's take on it. Joel, I'll start with you. Do you use shared campaigns for your campaign management, and does it affect anything typically with your optimization and ongoing improvement?
When you say shared budget, you're talking about like multiple channels and we have to divide budget across them?
I think for the most part, from what I'm getting here, there's the shared budget option within Google and Bing where you can have one budget for a select amount of campaigns. So you're instead of having a daily budget for each, you're using one budget to manage multiple campaigns.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so you're saying let's say we have a budget for an account. Okay, well basically I look at it. I kind of look inside of the campaigns and I try to understand what's profitable or not, and I divide them into two boats. If there are keywords, or their ad groups, or their campaigns, or even if we're talking about different PPC channels, that some are profitable. The profitable ones are offsetting the ones that are not costing, or that are unprofitable. The purpose of the unprofitable ones is to optimize and make them profitable so that we end up having a bigger boat of profitable elements in our PPC arsenal, whether it be keywords or campaigns or ad groups or channels or whatever. I hope I'm addressing your question appropriately, but I think I am. But what I'm trying to say is that I kind of just basically look at it as the goal is to look at this into a more. I'm explaining things on a very macro level, but every time we're talking about this, there are little micro levels inside of it, and you kind of have to take it one step at a time. You have to optimize things in stages, and the more you have that's profitable, the more you can afford to lose on what's not. The reason why you're losing is to eventually learn enough to make it strong and profitable to then feed the rest of the machine. Did that answer the question or not?
In some way, I think that's definitely going to be for the multi-channel one. Now, I want to know specifically from a shared budget feature. I know Google and Bing for sure has it, and I think that's what a few of the people are talking about. Aaron or Ginny, have you guys ever used the shared budget feature? I can toss it to you. I'll go with Ginny first, and then we'll hop into you, Aaron.
To be honest, not much in text campaigns. In shopping campaigns is more where I've used that, where you've got campaigns segmented less from a budget perspective and more from how you're trying to funnel traffic quality. So where you don't really care how the budget gets allocated, you really care more about how you're funneling traffic from whether it's brand traffic or generic traffic or whatever, however you're segmenting those campaigns. That's typically how I've approached the shared budget function.
Okay, good. Aaron?
I mean, in my opinion, you have to, Jenny, you said something smart there that I think maybe was kind of in the middle, a little quiet, but performance-based segmentation. In my mind, I think a lot of accounts that we look at are very. I'm going to do my best to not sound too googly right now, but
We're going to hold you to it.
well, look, I mean, all of us in this webinar that are hosting it, and I'm going to make an assumption, and most people watching it are dramatic over-segmenters. So since we've all been doing this for a while, we know that the original and still the often taught best way to structure your campaigns is you segment campaigns based on site hierarchy. So you have a campaign for shoes, a campaign for socks, a campaign for pants, all that sort of stuff. But when you're talking about using shared budgets are okay to me when performance is similar. But if performance is similar, then why are you segmenting to new campaigns? I think a lot of marketers think about campaigns in a little bit of a dated way, that it's more of a segmentation tool, but we're starting to look at it more from sort of a performance or targeting tool. Basically, if targeting needs to be different or budgets need to be different for any way, then split out the campaigns. But if they don't, keep them together and keep the data big.
Okay. And how does it affect typically your optimization tactics compared to what you said over segmenters might be doing?
Honestly, it doesn't. It just means they're in different buckets. So having things in a separate campaign bucket, I mean, we have a number of clients that have multiple accounts because Google has limits, but they all operate the same way. It just depends on where the buckets are. The interesting thing about campaigns as a segmentation point is when you start factoring in things like smart bidding or smart optimization. I am not a wizard. I don't know the background. I don't know how they make the secret sauce, but I do know that there are campaign minimums for a lot of the smart bidding features. So whatever wizardry they're working on has a lot of things that look at campaign levels. So treating campaigns as a hyper segmentation factor or having campaigns with enough budget to get one click a day, you're going to lose a lot of information, and whatever gains you're going to have from the segmentation are going to be washed out.
Okay. Joel, I want to make sure we get to everything in your presentation. Do you have anything else to deliver?
Not
much.
webinar. We're just going to jump to the conclusion, and then we could go on our panel discussion.
Perfect. Let's go back and wrap it up.
Okay, so let's make that happen. So to conclude, in order to get the budgets you need in order to optimize effective, profitable campaigns, you should approach it with the risk factors. With the 3 factors: data load, data cost, and how much you're willing to risk. They all play on each other when it comes to determining how much you need to start. When you're asking for PPC budget, at least with the type of advertising efforts I work with, it is simply to get to the point where we have campaigns that are not an expense, but an asset. You're not paying for advertising. Advertising is paying you. The amount of money you invest to start comes in order to buy statistics that you need in order to reach that state. In order to get it, you can reduce anxiety by setting expectations, by using the campaign lifecycle that I laid out from the benchmark period to where we start off saying, hey, listen, we're going to take a small percentage of what you're willing to invest into building this money machine for your business and understand how far you are from the goal. And this reduces anxiety because let's say it just doesn't work, it doesn't fly, then you might stop and think. You let your boss relax knowing that you're not just going to take that 10%, that let's say 20 grand is their budget, and just throw it in the garbage. You're going to test the waters first before you move forward. And if you test the waters and you find that you're far away, you can then try it a little bit and go through a tiny part of the growth period in order to see what you could do to close the gaps. Let's say after the benchmark period, you realize that there's a sweet spot, there's some targeting that's working great, but there was a lot of junk in your campaign that just wasn't working, just keywords that were spending and not converting. Let's say some geos that you're targeting not converting. You can fix that through the growth period. And with the growth period, if you're able to close the gap between cost and revenue, you're able to relax whoever's funding you to let you continue until you're able to profit, until you're able to reach the profit period where you're able to not only worry about growing, you're able to worry about, I kind of actually jumped from benchmark period to growth period. What I was saying was, it is the benchmark period where you're working on closing those gaps, Afterwards, you have the growth period and then the profit period. So once you close the gaps in the benchmark period, you're able to then optimize to where you're able to spread your campaigns out as far as they can go. Every profitable keyword that you can get, you're bidding on. You have a bid set so that way you're able to get exactly as much back as you're spending on it. And then you start cutting bids in order to start increasing your profits. So when you come with it with a plan, with exactly how much you need and what the process is to reach your maximum profits, you're able to get the confidence you need in order to make everything fly. So it is at this point that we can move on to the discussion. I have my contact information right here. My Twitter handle is Liquid Joel. You can reach me at Joel at PPC Designs. I love questions. I don't mind answering them at all. And yeah, we have 20 minutes left. Joe, let's hit it.
Yes, yeah, we do. We definitely got time for some questions. There's still a ton pouring in, so we may not be able to get to all of them. So anyone who's listening to the webinar, you have Joel's information. I'm sure Semrush has been tweeting out our Twitter handles and everything too, so you will be able to get to reach us afterwards if we don't get to your questions. So one of them we had that I thought was pretty appropriate because it might affect anyone on all different levels. So there's a few different ways that I've worked with clients that have tackled budget. We've had clients who have a yearly budget, and we could use that budget however we want for the entire year. But then there's a lot of clients out there, especially a lot of smaller clients, they have to maintain that fixed monthly budget. So I would like to get everyone's opinion on how do you handle between the two. If you have dealt with both scenarios, if you've only dealt with one, just let us know and then just describe how you've dealt with it. So someone who has a yearly budget versus someone who just has a fixed monthly budget, how do you work on planning optimization in between those two? And Ginny, I'll start off with you sometime. How have you dealt with that in the past?
Sorry. So I think I guess I would say it goes back to setting expectations, what Joel was saying. So basically, even if there's an annual budget, having expectations broken down by whether it's seasonality that's going to dictate how things are changing, and basically break it down in manageable pieces and have everybody be on the same page, as whether it's quarter by quarter, month by month, whatever it is. And it's going to depend on the nature of the business and what their seasonality looks like and what promotion changes are going to happen. And so that's, I guess, typically how I would approach that.
Sure. Aaron, we'll kick off with you, dealing with either fixed yearly or set monthly budgets.
So first of all, I'm glad that you said monthly. Again, we'll point to Uncle Aaron's Enterprise Emporium. We deal with clients sometimes that have daily targets or weekly targets, which in the past was great because Google had daily budgets that they mostly respected. I'll take my Google hat off now because what's the point of a budget if you can just double it when you feel like it? Yeah. But anyway, obviously Google and I'm sure soon Bing will operate on a 30-day window now. So monthly is, you kind of have to do it unless you want to script your brains out. But exactly like Jenny said, it's a lot about expectation setting. It's a lot around planning for seasonality. What we have gotten in the habit of doing, even for e-commerce retailers who fully expect to make all of their money in the fourth quarter around holidays, we do our best to capture everything that's available in the beginning of the year so we don't have to play catch up. So if there's an area where you're going to shift budget bias, be it weekly or monthly or annually or whatever, we skew a little heavy a little early because it's much easier to, put a money fire out if we're already ahead of our targets versus try to play catch up if we're behind and we know that the demand isn't there.
I think you're describing situations where you have a budget and you have to spend it no matter what, right?
No, not necessarily. I mean, when we get our budgets from clients, let's use an e-commerce retailer, for example. A couple of years ago, we had this where Christmas was on a Friday. So in turn, it wound up being a short shopping season because the shipping cutoff was like the Friday before. So we lost a couple days. So in turn, there's less demand because less people are shopping because the stuff won't get there in time for presents. So we had a certain amount of demand that we would count on for December, but given it's search and we can't make people search, we have to grab what's there. Okay. If we find ourselves behind at the end of a budgeting period for revenue, there's no way to go get that revenue within our channel because the searches just don't exist. Right. So we would rather set ourselves up ahead so that we don't have to play catch up later, and that, you know, if we have some stuff to work out, we might as well work it out in the quiet period than just sort of hope that the busy time is going to catch it.
Okay, because my perspective might be a bit different just because of the different types of companies I've been working with. And when I say that, it's like I wouldn't work with anybody that just comes in with a yearly budget. To me, the budget is simply something that you're investing in order to become profitable. The accounts that I work with are ones where if we're able to reach a certain KPI, and that KPI is usually cost per sale. If we're able to break that barrier and become more than 100% ROI, there's no reason not to put as much as they can into it. And I'm not going to say no reason, because there could be factors such as time to profit and so on. And if that's the case, they value future money less than current money. I get that. But generally, the clients that I work with are ones that really don't have any budget limitation as long as they are profitable. Once we're able to build campaigns that are day in and day out making that money, we could just throw as much money into it. So if someone comes to me and says, this is our annual budget, I'll say, like, for what? I mean, this isn't something, you're not spending money on PPC. PPC is paying you. We just need to take some funds, put it into the machine in order to buy the optimization that we need in order to get to that point. And after that, it's unlimited. And I mean, and it's with that approach that, I mean, you know, like we've launched some very, very massive campaigns. And also you mentioned about search, which is very interesting. I find that the largest campaigns that you can optimize are not search, but instead they're display or Facebook. And the reason being is that you're able to reach people who don't know to look. So a lot of the funnels that are the biggest funnels that I manage are ones where I'm targeting people that I convince them to purchase the product, because sales copy, I make them aware of something that they want. The sales copy compels them. And like this, I'm not limited by a particular market size. I'm actually growing a market size. So that's my look on it. And it could be that I'm a bit naive because I'm working kind of on these, like, you know, niche markets, but that's how I see it.
I don't think it's naivety. That's a hard word to
something like that, you know, just go with it.
Somewhere around there. No, but when you start thinking about quarterly earnings releases for publicly traded companies, or if you think about people trying to raise funding with venture capital, they'll have different metrics that they're focusing on, be it, okay, you have to show a certain degree of growth year over year, so beating yourself by too much isn't necessarily good, because then you have to beat yourself again next year and the growth slows, so then Wall Street gets mad. So there's different kinds of politics that you have to deal with different client sizes. And I mean, that
like
if
how the first iPhone didn't have video, even though it could have had video, because they want you to buy the next one, even though they could have in the beginning.
Exactly. So if we're coming full circle, going all the way back to the beginning, what makes sense to us from a search perspective, because I wholeheartedly agree, like, if we're making money, why do we not make unlimited money?
Right.
But there's these other business factors that the accounting team has to deal with, that the finance team has to deal with, that the CEO has to deal with, that we have to be empathic towards.
Well, and also it's not always easy to tell if you're making money, depending on how you're tracking, whether you're, you know, if you're in lead gen and it looks like you're delivering all these terrific leads, and then it turns out, oh, actually the finance department says these people all have bad credit. And so how long does that cycle take to be able to figure out that, oh, this channel that we thought was delivering so well, or this campaign, whatever it is not actually delivering well? Or you've got an omni-channel retailer who can't track what's happening in stores, and or the in-store people and the digital people are acting like rivals and fighting over who gets credit and how all this stuff gets attributed. So but Joel, to your point, I do think, like, that's the ideal way that this works, is that you are, you know, once you start making money and you can and show that you're making money, then you're thinking of it as an investment. And just that the realities for some is that the ability to say this is working is fuzzier.
Yeah. So I want to get to one more question, because we've got about 5 minutes left, and we've talked a lot about growing. It's been mentioned with other channels a few times, and I think that's extremely important, especially when budgets are involved, whether you have limited or unlimited budgets. So we have many more options to use now in PPC besides just Google and Bing. You know, Facebook, LinkedIn, Quora, Twitter, Reddit, Apple, Waze, and other ones I'm not even mentioning. So if you are really focused on growing and you have the budget to spend, or even if you don't, how much are you educating your clients or potential clients on these additional channels? How are you introducing these potential new channels to your clients? And if they are interested, or you're trying to convince them, are you more focused on taking budget that's not working in other channels or campaigns and shifting it over? Or for the most part, if you have a good idea and max out, you still want to test, are you asking for new budget? So I just slammed like 5 questions right there, but I would like to get everyone's feedback on that. And Joel, we could start with you this time.
Okay. The last thing, I think the answer would be, it depends on how aggressive you want to be. In other words, if you want to grow and conquer faster, then you'll take more money, even though it costs you more, as opposed to take money you've already earned. Could you go back to the first part?
Yeah, just specifically with the other channels, how much are you educating your clients on these new channels? And are you asking them particularly if they want to join these other channels? Because when you do, more channels equals more money, more budget.
Right.
So how are you educating them on where the budget should be used?
Oh, okay. Well, so basically, it's all about, if let's say they have massive amounts of budget that they're willing to dump into some new effort, then we'll go ahead and risk more and try to optimize every ad channel we can at once. So and to me, that's kind of the same thing as launching a search campaign and bidding on every single keyword that could drive a sale, as opposed to the ones that are more likely to drive sales, make those profitable, than expanding to the ones you don't know. It's just a matter of taking things in stages. Those stages can cross over from more keywords to also other PPC channels. I do also see some relations with things. If something's working on Google search, it is highly likely that it'll also work on Bing Yahoo. I mean, search is search. If someone is looking for something, it means they're showing intent to buy. And they have a value for that traffic. You could easily translate that over to another platform. So it really depends on what it is, how it's working, and let's say also if you found that you can't do any better with one channel, then you're more likely to go to the next as well.
Ginny, what's your take on multi-channels and shifting budgets around between them?
Well, it depends. Everyone's favorite answer, right?
The PPC question right there. It depends.
Yeah. Sometimes there are going to be companies where it does make sense to siphon some budget off of search that is not performing as well as you would hope, and try it out in another channel. Typically, though, I mean, if search is working and you're getting as much as you can out of it, oftentimes it's then what else? And what else can we do, right? It's like, we want to just keep growing. We want to keep getting more and more things. How many channels can we start testing? And so ideally that comes from incremental, and it's handled separately. It's thought about differently. I mean, if you're talking about Bing and Google, you probably have a search bucket, right? But then if you're talking about Facebook, whether it comes from a paid social bucket or however you end up kind of divvying that, but that it typically will come from an extra channel. That said, when you get smaller, so Core has been doing tons of stuff lately, obviously, really iterating on all their features. You say, I want to try this out, but I honestly have no idea what the scale is going to be. You may just take some budget from somewhere and try it out and see if it deserves its own dedicated budget. So it depends, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But I think it really just depends on what makes sense for the business at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you mentioned towards the end there too. It's something that I've typically done too. If there's certain areas of your current campaigns or channels that are providing zero value for you, pause that, use that budget, and test something new that could work better. So, Aaron, I'm going to see what you have to say about that, and what have you done with multi-channels and budgeting?
I get to wrap this up. So I think the most important thing is to check the definition of working. So when you think about different advertising mediums, you're not going to see performance of a billboard in Google Analytics. You're not going to see how your postcards did in things like that. So when you're thinking about these individual channels, Ginny, again, you're smart. You must be smart. You use the word incrementality, and when you think honestly, we at enterprise level tend to have more tools to figure that stuff out, but I actually think it's much more important for a small business than they give it credit for. So sure, we can max out on Google and Bing, but how many of those things would have happened anyway? How many of those things did we actually influence and drive versus how much did we just sort of contribute and help someone across the finish line? So when we start thinking about how all these channels act together, we need to have some larger scale source of truth and also definition of truth. Obviously, we want to have individual goals. So, okay, we know that Facebook is pretty bad at getting data in GA, and we know that view-throughs are important, but we're not sure how important. So certainly look at these individual channel performance things to see how they're doing, which can guide your budget shifting. But when you're looking at big picture, monthly, quarterly, annually, look at what the new investment did. Was the new money valuable? And when you're asking for new money, you're going to be tasked with the same question. If you're trying to steal money from another channel, how does it perform relative to that channel's goal versus your channel's goal? And then to figure out, okay, so maybe we spent a ton of money on newspapers, but maybe they are doing okay, just in a different way.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I'll just add, from an attribution standpoint, it could be that your billboards and your newspapers are driving your search traffic, right? So it shows up in search, but it's actually coming from somewhere else. And to your point, Aaron, kind of looking at the big picture that's where it makes so much sense.
But then it's branded search.
Man, that's it. Well, I'd hate to cut it off, but I have to. We're out of time. They're not paying us overtime to do this, so we're going to bail and get back to work.
You're getting paid for this?
Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that. So, Joel, Ginny, Aaron, thank you so much. We had a ton of great information. I told you guys we're not going to be able to get to all the questions. There were many more that we couldn't get to. So, SEMrush, please tweet out where they can find us on Twitter and all that fun information. So, if we didn't get to your question, I'm sure one of our panelists will be more than happy to get back to you. So thank you for joining us. We hope you learned a lot about how to use your PPC budgets. And hopefully we'll see you at the next PPC SEMrush webinar. Have a good one, everyone.
You too, guys. See